Hello everyone, it's me. I'm Miranda from Speaking Through the Fog. Today I am not feeling too well, so I'm not going to do anything really super complicated. I did want to talk about, though, however, something that I came across recently. It has nothing to do with research, it's just a personal experience. I have a friend who is considered in the severe chronic fatigue uh, symptom level, and she's not doing too well, and she's in the hospital. So I wanted to look up some of her symptoms and see if there was any information I could give her to help her. And I was very disappointed to find once again how difficult it was to research on severe chronic fatigue, um, and just like its symptoms and prognosis and what people have to deal with and why they have to deal with it and what's going on with them and stuff. And I I do understand that we're still at the very infancy of being able to understand this illness, but um, you think that they would give a little bit more information for the severe people because they're the people being affected gravely with this disease. And I mean, if I know one person who has it just in the month or so that I've been in the community, then there's got to be a ton of people in the US who are in the severe category. And the um, UK had a little bit of info into it. The UK has a severe chronic fatigue syndrome awareness day, and so they had a few caretakers talking, and one person who, kind of typed something, had her loved one type something out. And I do realize that severe chronic fatigue syndrome sufferers are probably not as outspoken because they're not as able to handle having people deal with them. But the lack of information is just astounding to me. That if you had cancer or AIDS or MS or lupus or any of those, they all talk about the the progression of the disease, and what happens at the end is kind of something they at least allude to. Whereas it's almost like doctors themselves act like, of course, like that's not even on their radar, not something that could happen. Um, the researchers don't talk about it really at all, although I would assume that some of their research into biological effects it kind of carries over to that. But what I'm really surprised is that the chronic fatigue advocacy groups don't talk more about severe chronic fatigue sufferers, because they're the most feeling producing, like, anger at the establishment inducing people in our community. I mean, I watched a heartbreaking documentary called The Voices in the Shadows. It's a BBC documentary, and it talks to and follows some people who have severe chronic fatigue syndrome and what they had to go through, and how they got to where they are today, and some interviews with people who had loved ones who died from chronic fatigue syndrome, and they're um and I cried through the whole thing because these people, what they have to go through, how they're treated, um it just is it's unthinkable that in this day and age, with as much as we know, with as scared as we are about hysteria and hospitals mistreating people, and you would think, we could build a robotic heart, but we can't treat these patients in a caring way and give them a respectful decline when they get sick, is just super unfortunate. And I don't know why people aren't talking about it more in the community. It's very, for me, almost disrespectful in a way to those people, because it it almost, it's like we're hiding it in a way. Like we don't want to talk about it, and we do talk about it in passing. But why don't we have on websites like a separate section talking about the final stages, people with severe chronic fatigue? I really don't understand it. I don't understand why, when I'm looking up something about, I'm like trying to think of all I know about the last stages and what I've seen when I watched that documentary in cases, and like, why do they lose so much weight, and why are they, like, so averse to light, and why, and I'm just, why can't they eat anymore, kind of thing. And I'm just not finding any information on it. What I wound up having to do to even kind of have some sort of answer is look at AIDS, because I was going, so for my research, we have a lowered immune system and higher inflammation and a bigger risk for infection. And the last stages look like the last stages of AIDS if you look at these patients, because they're, look like skeletons. And so do AIDS patients, and they suffer kind of the same, and it seems like researchers kind of look at them kind of the same. So I looked it up, and they have AIDS wasting disease, which is a nutrient deficiency in most cases, and atrophy of muscles in most cases, which is what I would assume you could apply to chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, why don't we have chronic fatigue wasting disease if they have AIDS wasting disease? Why aren't they talking about chronic fatigue syndrome wasting disease, or systemic exertion intolerance wasting disease, or whatever it is? Why isn't that something that, they warn against? Why isn't it something that they are um helping people who are severe understand? Because this friend of mine, trying to give her some answers to help her where with her hospital stay, um, as to how to talk to the doctors, was almost impossible. So I guess in this blog it's more personal than it usually is, just because I'm so confused and upset and angry, and really just completely disappointed in the chronic fatigue syndrome community, that this isn't something we're putting into the light and we try to help with. Because I mean, people who are light to moderate do need help as well, understanding what's going on, but that doesn't mean we need to completely forget people who are severe as well, because they're probably even more questioning what is wrong with me, and they've probably even more been put through the ringer of being told it's psychological, and being made to exercise, and not being capable of getting better. And so I don't know if anybody is listening who has any influence into this whatsoever. I guess I'm putting a call to arms out and saying, let's talk about this. Let's start thinking about this. So This I'm sorry if this is boring or it's not exactly like my other blogs in that it's not super factual. But I just it's something I wanted to talk about. So this is Speaking Through the Fog, and I will have something a little bit more informative and more on topic next time. Thank you.